everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be creating a new scrapbook layout. We did one last month and a lot of you really enjoyed seeing a layout being created using various MFT stamps and dies. So I decided to try and make this a monthly feature. I can't guarantee it will be every month, but I'm going to try and do some kind of a layout once per month. And for this one here, I'm using some really cute, adorable pictures of my niece. These are actually quite old. She's 7 years old now, so they're like 7 years old. But I really love this grouping of baby pictures and wanted to share some fun new ways I'm using some MFT products on my layouts. So I pulled a bunch of products, which I usually do when I start this type of a project. I'm not going to use a lot of them, but I kind of just went through everything that I had and pulled out what I thought would work for the layout. Now the bundle of baby clothes dies, which you can see here, is going to be the main focus of the layout. I kind of had this idea in mind that I wanted to create a clothesline of baby clothes kind of in a sky and have that be the top area of the layout. So I've picked out some pattern papers, and these I'm going to use to cut out the various clothes from this die set. And then I'm going to create kind of an inked top piece here. So I have my pictures, and this is just a regular piece of white cardstock. It's just normal size. And I'm just going to, I put a little pencil marker there on that white cardstock piece, so I kind of know how high the pictures are going to come up. And I'm going to work above that pencil line to create kind of a sky scene. So I've pulled out some distress inks here. I have squeezed lemonade and mustard seed for yellow, and then I also have peacock feathers and ink blending tools for both, and I just kind of cleaned off my blending tool there. And I also have a sheet from my Smart Grid paper pad, which is going to allow me to do some inking and not worry about my work surface below. And I'm going to create a sun first in the sky area. So I have the radiating rays stencil, and I've just added that to my layout piece here with some repositionable tape. And I'm going to use my ink blending tool and very carefully add ink through the stencil. I'm starting with the squeezed lemonade, and I have this very sped up, as you can tell. And I'm just kind of adding the ink slowly from the center and then working my way out towards the outside edges of those rays. And then I'm going in with some mustard seed as well to kind of darken up the center area of the sun. And then when I remove it, I also want to add some yellow to the middle of the sun as well. So I'm kind of adding it to the middle, and then I'm going around the sun and kind of blending it out into the rays a tiny bit, just so they're not completely harsh white. Then I'm going to reposition the stencil so that the openings are in between all of the yellow rays we've already created. And now I'm going to take my peacock feathers and add ink through the stencil this way. And this is just going to allow me to kind of add the sky color in between the yellow rays, but not have the blue ink going over top of the yellow we've already created. Once I had the stenciling part done, I removed the stencil and added a little bit more color around that sun just to kind of even it out. And now I'm taking the mini cloud edges stencil and I'm using that to create all of the clouds in my sky. And you can see as I'm working that the stencil isn't quite long enough to go across the piece of paper that I'm working on, but if you just kind of move the stencil over and kind of line it back up, it will easily create a nice even flow of clouds right across the whole entire page. So I'm just doing that until I have this whole top area filled up. And then you can see I kind of have that one area right above where I'm working there. It's got a lot of blue color. And if I had it to do over, I think I would have changed this a tiny bit. I don't like how dark it ended up around the sun, and I don't like the yellow in the sun. It ended up just too yellow for me. I wish it was a little bit lighter in color. I think it would have been nice if I would have not used the mustard seed and just used the squeezed lemonade. But it was fine. I'm not going to start over. I'm going to keep it as is. And I'm just adding some water here, and I'm trying to kind of take away some of that color with the water. So you see I do have a little bit of a lighter area there in that blue piece. The water did help to lift some of that color off. So I'm definitely happier with it, but I still would have preferred to have it a little bit toned down. I just think it's a little bit bright. But I just went ahead, carried on, so now I'm working on the little clothesline piece that I'm going to add into the sky. And this was kind of the main idea that started this layout. I knew I wanted to have a clothesline and I wanted to have some die-cut clouds. So I'm using the stitch clouds here, and what I've done is just die-cut a whole bunch of them so I have a bunch to choose from. And I'm just kind of laying stuff out and figuring out how I want to position it. I wasn't sure how many clothing pieces I would need, so I did 4, and I end up only using the 3 on the top, and then I'm going to use that little green jumpsuit there at the bottom when I get to that point. So we are going to use it, I'm just not going to use it in the top area. So now that I have the main part of my sky done, I went ahead and adhered the photos to the cardstock piece. I left a little bit of area at the bottom because we are going to create a little border piece that we're going to attach there when we start to put everything together. But now I can go ahead and add everything up on top because I know the photos are positioned and staying where I've added them. So I know what kind of space I have to work with up in the top area. So I'm just assembling all the clothing pieces. I cut them out of various pieces of white cardstock and pattern papers, and I hadn't adhered anything together yet. So I'm just using some liquid glue and my tape runner, and I'm just adhering all of the different pieces to create all these little clothing. And then I'm going to add them directly onto the clothesline. Now there is little like clothespin dies that come in the set, and I completely forgot to add them to the layout. So they are not on here, but I definitely would have added them if I remembered. I think it would have just added to the scene and really made them look a little bit more realistic. So now I'm adding the clouds to each end of the clothesline. I kind of want it to look like the clothes are kind of floating in between the two clouds. So I have one down on the side there, and then I added one to the top. I knew right away that I didn't want the cloud to overhang on the side of the layout, so I did use my scissors and trim that off, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the top one, so I decided to leave it for now, and then I'll come back to that later once I start to adhere everything together onto the actual gray piece that we're going to layer our panel onto. So I'm using my tape runner now and adding that to the back of all the clothing pieces now that they are all adhered together, and I'm just adding them all to the clothesline. So you can see now I did jump ahead a little bit, and I have the title of the layout added at the top. I have a die-cut sun and a few additional clouds. Now the title is just cut out from the Little Letters die-namics die set, and it just took a little bit of time to kind of die cut them all and get them up on the layout there, so I just figured I would jump through that and adhere them all down, so that's what I just did. And then I added that sun die cut on top. I ended up cutting out that sunny sky sun and adding it to the layout because I was still kind of unhappy with how bright yellow that was in the corner, and I thought by die cutting it from a lighter yellow cardstock and layering it over top, it would kind of help tone it down a bit, which it did, so I was happier having that on there than just leaving it with the inked sun. I did end up cutting off all of the cloud pieces that were overhanging on the side and top of the layout, and now I'm moving down to the bottom area where I'm going to have all the journaling. So I've just printed the journaling onto a piece of white cardstock, and I've trimmed it down so it's going to fit in the area that I have left underneath the photos. And I'm just taking that same mini cloud edge stencil and I'm adding some cloud detail to this piece as well. I didn't want it to be completely stark white, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with this piece when I started the layout, but since I didn't use that extra little piece of clothing, the little short set, I decided to add another cloud to the side piece here where we have a little bit of space, and then use that little extra piece of clothing and put it onto the cloud and kind of have it sitting there on the cloud. So I thought it would look better to have the cloud detail inked on that piece as well. So you can see now where the journaling area and the cardstock that we have our photos on, where it meets in the middle, we have that line, and we need to cover that up. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a little border that we're going to add over top of that. It's just a strip of white cardstock that I've added a little bit of blue ink to just to give it a little bit of color. And now I'm taking this sentiment, "You Are Loved a Lot," from the More Essential Sentiment stamp set, and I stamped that right across this little border piece with some cement gray ink. I like using cement gray ink to do any type of stamping on layouts because it's really toned down and it doesn't overpower everything else that's kind of happening on the layout. Once I had the little border attached, I've added the little cloud at the bottom like I mentioned before, and then I added that little extra piece of clothing on top of there. Now I really wanted to use the Welcome Baby stamp set in this layout somewhere, so I decided to use the Awesome People Make Awesome Baby sentiment, and I stamped it onto a sentiment banner that I had cut from the stitched fishtail sentiment strips. I cut off the one edge to make it straight, and I added it right at the top of that cloud area where we did the little jumpsuit and that kind of border area. It had enough space in the photo that I was able to easily cover it and not take away from the pictures. And then I added one more cloud to the top, and then that's going to complete our layout for today. I really hope you enjoyed the process of seeing the layout come together, and I look forward to creating another one soon. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.